Trading. And the Bangko Sentral says the Philippine economy can still absorb another rate hike as growth is expected to rebound in the second half of the year. Well, we're waiting for that live shot in Quezon City at the Philippine Statistics Authority, where we're expecting National Statistician Nicholas Dennis Mapa to report on the Philippines' June inflation data. And we'll get to that as soon as it becomes available. Well, Business World has expected or is expecting 6.6% in its poll of 18 analysts. The Bangko Sentral is expecting a growth range in inflation of between 6 and 7%. The 2026 inflation target still sits between 2 and 4%, and we're sitting well above that in the previous inflation figure in May, sitting above in terms of core inflation, and that is the beyond the comfort level of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. We've heard from the governor himself, Eli Remolona, just about 24 hours ago at the sidelines of a meeting with media, saying this economy can still withstand one more interest rate hike in the order of 25 basis points. Let's take a look at that live shot now and that live report out of the Philippine Statistics Authority.
Inflation sa bansa para sa buwan ng Hunyo 2026. Ang headline inflation rate o ang pagtaas ng presyo ng mga produkto at serbisyo sa bansa ay bumagal sa antas na 6.4% nitong Hunyo 2026. Noong Mayo 2026, ang headline inflation rate ay naitala sa antas na 6.8% at 1.4% naman noong Hunyo 2025. Ang average inflation mula Enero hanggang Hunyo 2026 ay nasa antas na 4.8%. Ang pangunahing dahilan ng mas mababang antas ng inflation nitong Hunyo kumpara noong Mayo 2026 ay ang mas mabagal na pagtaas ng presyo ng transport na may 12.8% inflation rate. Ito ay may 61.1% share sa pagbaba ng pangkalatang inflation sa bansa. Ang nag-ambag sa mas mababang antas ng inflation para sa transport ay ang mas mabagal na pagtaas ng presyo ng mga sumusunod. Gasolina na may 39.2% inflation rate at diesel na may 39% inflation rate. Ang pangalawang dahilan ng mas mababang antas ng inflation nitong Hunyo ay ang mas mabagal na pagtaas ng presyo para sa food and non-alcoholic beverages na may 5.2% inflation rate. Ito ay may 37.6% share sa pagbaba ng pangkalatang inflation sa bansa. Ang nag-ambag sa mas mababang antas ng inflation para sa food and non-alcoholic beverages ay ang mas mabilis na pagbaba ng presyo ng meat and other parts of slaughtered land animals na may negative 4.2% inflation rate, particular dito ang karne ng baboy. Nakaambag din sa mas mabagal na pagtaas ng presyo ng mga sumusunod. Cereals and cereal products na may 12.1% inflation rate, particular dito ang bigas, at fish and other seafood na may 7.8%.
That's Yusek Mapa reporting there of a slowing in our inflation for June at 6.4%. And that's coming all the way from 6.6% in May, 6.8% in fact. And that is a lot slower than our Business World poll of 18 analysts of 6.6%. The inflation forecast for the Bangko Sentral is at 6 to 7%. So that sits well right smack in the middle of that inflation forecast. And joining us is Finance Secretary Frederico. It's so good seeing you again, SecDec. Welcome back to the program.
Hi, Cathy. Good morning.
Okay, so what do you make of the June inflation result at 6.6%?
I must say it is not I must say it is not unexpected. as the crisis in the Straits of Hormuz have been winding down, we can expect that inflation numbers will continue to gradually decline as we expect fuel prices and oil prices to drop. And of course, the after effects of that is you can expect that the prices of the rest of the commodities that use a lot of fuel will also decline accordingly.
But elevation, inflation is still elevated, SecDec, and way above the Bangko Central's 2026 inflation target of between 2 and 4%. So what concrete additional steps are you prepared to recommend to protect the purchasing powers of Filipinos and reinforce food security?
Yeah, I think the most important point now to watch out for the after effects of the oil crisis that happened 6 months ago, no? And of course, we're expecting that the number one commodity that will go up in prices because of higher fuel prices will be food prices, no? So as you can see again, the larger parts of the inflation index that we watch out for are the food prices. So those are the ones that really the government, that would mean the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Trade and Industry is looking out very carefully at, not to ensure that we're able to manage and control these after effects of this oil crisis.
Well, the excise tax had been a big help for consumers, but the suspension of that, it's coming off. It's a 3-month suspension. It's temporary, and it's going away by next week. To my understanding, July 17th. With inflation still elevated, SecDec, what are you recommending to the president to let it lapse, extend it, or tweak it? And if so, on what criteria?
Yeah, you're right. The expiration of the 3-month drop in excise tax will be on July 17. There's a technical working board that is currently reviewing this, but I would just like to remind you that when the law was crafted, there was an actual threshold that was mentioned, and that is the price of Dubai crude at $80 a barrel. So that will be perhaps the single most important variable that the technical working board is looking at, whether the price of Dubai crude is currently above or below $80 a barrel and what it is projected to be for the next 3 months.
So you'd go by the law. You wouldn't recommend otherwise. I mean, we've had a conversation with Sec RC just 24 hours ago, and he said he'd rather let it continue to help more consumers.
I haven't seen the recommendation of the technical board, and I wouldn't want to preempt their work and their recommendation. At some point, it will come up to the level of the DBCC, which I co-chair. And at that point, we will take a look at their recommendation and what their projections are on Dubai crude prices and oil prices in general. It's the same with inflation, for example, since I heard you talk a lot about inflation just before I came onto the screen. And a lot of the decisions to be made are dependent on the inflation projections of the technical groups of the Bangko Central. So you have to take a look at the data to make an informed decision.
Now, you're also a monetary board member at the Bangko Central. We've heard from the governor himself, Eli Remolona, saying that this economy could absorb one more rate hike. Do you agree?
Based on your question, can the economy absorb another rate hike? I think the answer is yes. But I guess the more relevant question is, should we have another rate hike? But to answer your question directly, yes, the economy can absorb another 25 basis point rate hike. But again, a lot will be dependent on the numbers that will be generated by the research departments of the Bangko Central, both economic growth and inflation outlook. Because it's always a balance between these two things when the Monetary Board makes a decision on whether to hike, reduce, or stay as is interest rate.
And also coordination between monetary and fiscal policies. On the fiscal front, you're managing that catch-up spending while keeping deficit under control. Where are we now in terms of the disbursements? Because government construction has gone down double digits and has yet to recover from the flood corruption scandal.
Yeah, we have been assured by the secretaries of the infrastructure departments, that would really be the Department of Public Works and the Department of Transportation. Both secretaries have assured us that their spending will ramp up in the second half of this year. So we're quite optimistic for the third quarter and of course the fourth quarter if all of these come to fruition. Also, there have been changes made in the Department of Budget and Management, and the new Secretary of DBM also seems to be very prepared to do all this catch-up spending. So I'm quite optimistic about the second half of this year.
As to our upper middle income country status granted to us by the World Bank last week, what sort of role do you see public-private partnerships playing as alternative funding as the Philippines becomes less reliant on the official development assistances?
Yeah. Let me put this into perspective, Cathy, because I've read a lot of media reports, a lot of journalists, and a lot of experts keep talking about the concessional loans. So the country every year has a borrowing program, and about 70 to 80% of this borrowing program are from domestic private sources. 20 to 30% are foreign borrowings. Now, out of these 20 to 30% foreign borrowings, around half of that are from multilaterals and bilaterals, and again, another fraction of that is concessional loans. There seems to be a lot of attention on concessional loans, but I'd just like to remind everybody that concessional loans, as part of the government's overall borrowing program, only represents a very small fraction of our total borrowing program. So the most important thing about becoming an upper middle income class country, as far as borrowings are concerned, is that it improves the credit worthiness of the country. This means that the country can borrow at lower or better interest rates. And this is from the private sector, from private investors, from the retail market, from the banking industry. So the larger part of the country's total debt program is not coming from concessional loans from the multilaterals and the bilaterals. So again, I'd just like to say that by going up in classification to an UMIC, the country now has more avenues to borrow from the private sector and should be able to borrow at better rates.
As a final point, SecDec, digital fund transfers are turning cheaper by the hour. Our understanding is Land Bank is the latest to go all free. I mean, when does it start and what are the benefits of that?
Yeah, Land Bank started all of this. On the instruction of our president, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., Land Bank looked at ways to reduce the costs of transferring money from one wallet to another. So what Land Bank did is we reduced our rates from 15 pesos to 8 pesos, and we found several government agencies that were having transactions between people to government and were charging convenience fees. So Land Bank offered that we would have zero convenience fees to these government offices. So Land Bank started this. We were very happy to see that BPI followed, then RCBC. And today, I just got news before I came onto your show that Union Bank has likewise followed suit. So now there are actually 4 banks, of course, including the government-owned Land Bank, which I chair, that are now offering, starting today, zero transfer fees for people who transfer money from their Land Bank wallet to merchants or to friends and family. So of course, we're very, very happy about this. This has been one of my advocacies since I started, how to reduce digital transaction fees. And I think we are now almost more than halfway done. I'm pretty sure that all the other financial institutions will follow suit, either by reducing or by removing completely digital transaction fees.
Yeah, we can't keep up with the breaking news. Thank you so much for your insights and for joining us, Finance Secretary Frederico. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas says the economy can still withstand another interest rate hike as growth is expected to rebound in the second half of the year. BSP Governor Eli Remolona said the economy could grow by more than 3% in the second half as government spending picks up. With this, he said the country can still absorb another 25 basis point rate hike, calling it as a relatively small increase. Meantime, the Department of Economy, Planning and Development said the economy must grow by an average of at least 3.7% over the remaining 3 quarters to meet the government's revised target. The DBCC recently lowered its 2026 growth forecast to 3.5% to 4.5%, citing both global and domestic headwinds. Still, Economy Chief Arsenio Balisacan said conditions are expected to improve in the second half, driven by faster infrastructure implementation, stronger private investment, and efforts to restore business confidence. Prices at the pump rise this week, but Energy Secretary Sharon Garin says volatility in global oil may be easing. Gasoline climbs up to 25 cents per liter, diesel up to 3 pesos and 30 centavos per liter, and kerosene is up to 1 peso and 75 pesos per liter. These figures are within the upper band of the allowable range set by the DOE. Garin says global oil prices have already fallen below $80 per barrel. Prices are undergoing a period of adjustment as global markets calm down. But with oil prices not expected to fall immediately to pre-war levels, Nomura Global Markets Research warns it may keep core inflation sticky through second-round effects. Land Bank of the Philippines is indeed the latest bank to waive transfer fees. Starting today, July 7, Land Bank will make all online fund transfers free. It will also extend to overseas Filipino bank clients worldwide. Land Bank's policy supports President Marcos's directive to strengthen digital financial services and expand access to accessible banking services. And in that interview with SecDec, he just said Union Bank is indeed the latest after Land Bank to go zero fees. And you're watching Money Talks. Coming right up, inflation figures are in. Dominique Velasquez of China Bank will talk to us in a few minutes. And it is day 2 of Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment trial. Our mobile journalist Merimon Reyes joins us from the Senate. Keep it here on One News. Hi, Merimon. Thank you so much for waiting. Cathy here.
Good morning, Miss Cathy.
All right, thanks. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. The Senate Impeachment Court returns this afternoon for day 2 of the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte. For what to expect, we go live to our mobile journalist Merimon Reyes at the Senate. So bring us up to speed, Merimon.
Cathy, good morning. Today marks day 2 of the historic impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte. Yesterday, the Senate reconvened as the impeachment court and has answered some of the floating matters or questions throughout the weeks. That includes who will be serving as the presiding officer. Senator judges elected Senator Chis Escudero as presiding officer of the trial, and contentions from the minority bloc will be formally submitted anytime soon. They also answered the queries related to the still sealed green VIR box, wherein the court denied the prosecution's request to open and mark the contents of a sealed box. Citing a Supreme Court ruling, the court stated that it cannot take legal custody of items not officially deposited through proper judicial processes. So far, that is what happened, some of what happened yesterday. But for this day, we are expecting the beginning of the presentation of documentary evidence and witnesses from either the House prosecution team and the defense team. The first article of impeachment to be tackled would be article of impeachment 4, or allegations of grave threats. And the names mentioned for the July 7 and 8 trial, according to the witnesses hoping to be presented by the prosecution, would be Attorney Jeremy Lotok, Regional Director for NBI, and John Mark Calilong, Senior NBI Agent. They will be asked regarding the NBI's probe and investigation of an online press briefing done 2024, wherein VP Sara Duterte allegedly expressed threats, dissatisfaction with the administration, and a possible citing to sedition. So far, that's what we are anticipating starting 2 p.m. later onwards.
All
Cathy.
right, maraming salamat sa update. Our mobile journalist, Merimon Reyes, live from the Senate. Our next guest projected 6.2% inflation for June, and the result is at 6.4%. Dominique Velasquez, Chief Economist at China Bank, joins us now. It's good seeing you again, Dominique. Welcome back to the program.
Good to see you. Good morning, Cathy.
All right, nearly got it right. Came close, not quite so, but you were at the lower end of our forecasts there with a median at 6.6%. What do you make of the result?
Well, we're quite happy with the result. We really think, inflation is going down. We think it has peaked in May at 7.2%, although we think also that it's going to remain elevated at around 6% until end of the year. So I guess managing inflation at 6% is expected already. And I think maybe one of the good things that we saw is that rice prices did not increase so much month on month. It was actually negative 2%, something negative 2%. So that's good news. It's still rice prices are still higher than start of the year, but it's slowly coming down.
Right, rice relief. I mean, how sustainable is that though? Because we've got weather to worry about, El Nino, as well as local supply issues. That could reverse the trend.
Correct. So El Nino is coming end of the year to early next year. So we will likely see an increase in rice prices. However, I think recent statements from the Department of Agriculture, they're more open to increasing importation of rice given this El Nino phenomenon.
What about power? Because on the other side of the ledger, that's really played a role in limiting the drop in headline inflation. Do you think that's going to play that similar kind of role in the second half of the year?
Correct. There are so many risks. So rice is one. It makes up a big portion, 8% of the basket. Power also, but some of the increases, I think when the ERC approves some of the increases, these are staggered increases. So that should help, smoothen inflation. So that's one. Maybe another factor that came out maybe just last week was the minimum wage hike, which was a little bit larger than people expected. So that could also feed into inflation moving forward.
Okay, you've just heard from SecDec a couple of moments ago there, agreeing with the Bangko Sentral governor that the economy can absorb one more rate hike. And I know that you're forecasting just one more, 25 bips of a rate hike. Are you well entrenched with that notion that indeed it could come? And if it can it be happening maybe towards the end of the year? Do they have that sort of bandwidth to wait before they hike?
All right. Okay. I think we do agree with the BSP for their one more rate hike. I think SecGo already pointed out a good question that should they. So core inflation, which is sort of the underlying inflation trend, is actually higher at 4.4%. So that will be a concern because, oil prices, high electricity prices have been seeping into other areas already. So we think they will hike one more. We think they will wait for GDP outturn also, which is coming out in August. The Q2 outturn will come out in August. So that will actually set the pace on whether the economy can actually absorb more than one. But so far right now, we do think that they will raise one more because of faster core inflation also.
So how soon? August, October, or December?
August.
All right.
So maybe, they will not, because inflation will remain elevated, although slightly lower than previously. It's actually maybe a better idea to front load the rate hikes and then see its effect rather than, jump from one month to another.
All right, got that. Well, thank you so much for your views coming in at 6.4%. You came closest there. Dominic Velasquez of China Bank. Let's take a quick check on the Philippine peso. See, as that opened on this Tuesday, it is a tad stronger, 61.40 to the dollar. The local unit dropped by 7.6 centavos yesterday to settle at 61.491 against the greenback. Traders attributed the drop to expectations of elevated inflation for June. And checking in on the markets overseas, U.S. stock futures little changed in overnight trading. The Nasdaq down 0.2%, S&P 500 trading near the flat line, and the Dow is up less than 0.1%. Asian markets are mostly lower this Tuesday. South Korea's Kospi falls nearly 3%. Australia's ASX 200 slides 0.1%, and Japan's Nikkei 225 rises nearly 0.1%. U.S. markets ended higher this Monday, driven by gains in chip stocks. The Dow posted its 21st record of the year, up about 1/3%. The Nasdaq climbed 1.1%, and the S&P advanced 0.7%. The stock market returned to the 6,200 level, sustaining its upward momentum. Benchmark PSEI added 35 points yesterday, or 0.5% to close at 6,223. Regina Capital says the upward trajectory is a product of continued buying interest and positive market momentum. The broader All Shares Index rose 0.5%, with sectoral gauges all gaining ground except for services. Disinformation is not just a public problem, it is also hitting businesses. That is why Think Muna Pilipinas and Meralco are joining forces to promote media and information literacy. Mobile journalist Denise Valdesancho has this report.
In the current digital era, disinformation and misinformation persistently pose challenges for both the public and the business sector. To help combat the spread of false information, Think Muna Pilipinas and Meralco have formalized their partnership through the signing of a memorandum of agreement. The collaboration aims to promote media and information literacy, starting with Meralco employees before expanding the initiative to its more than 8 million customers. Meralco says the company has been a target of misinformation, particularly on issues involving electricity rates and other public concerns, making it important to strengthen efforts to provide timely and accurate information.
The fight against disinformation and misinformation never really stops. The only way to fight back is to tell the truth.
Under the agreement, Meralco and MediaQuest will roll out media and information literacy initiatives for the power distributors' employees, with plans to later extend the campaign to its more than 8 million customers. MediaQuest says engaging major companies like Meralco will help expand the reach of the advocacy and build a culture of responsible information sharing.
These big companies are movers of our industry, so they're leaders of our industry. And with them comes thousands of employees who can share this culture. And it's a good beginning. Then we can just expand to have everyone part of Think Muna.
Launched in 2024, Think Muna Pilipinas is a media and information literacy advocacy that encourages Filipinos to think critically, verify information, and help curb the spread of misinformation and disinformation. Mobile journalist Denise Valdesancho. We are One News.
And before we go, Alex Ayala's historic Wimbledon run has come to an end after falling to Italy's Jasmine Paolini in the round of 16. Ayala bounced back to win the second set after dropping the opener, but Paolini pulled away in the decider. Still, the 21-year-old made history as the first Filipino to win a Wimbledon singles main draw match. Ayala's remarkable run made her the first Filipina to reach the fourth round of a Grand Slam singles tournament. Congratulations, Ayala. You make us proud. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Have a great day ahead.